if you actually trade with real money is that there's a lot of emotions involved. You either get like really excited and euphoric, in which case sometimes it's a bad sign. It might mean a lot of times things turn against you when you're really greedy and euphoric about your trading. And then a lot of times when you're really afraid and you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna lose all my money, that's exactly when the stock reverses and goes up. So, there's this old quote, and I have it pulled up here, that Warren Buffett said. It's very famous. It's like, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. So, a lot of times that's easier said than done because we all have emotions as well. A lot of times when everyone's afraid, there's a panic, and it's hard to really separate yourself from that situation. But the beauty of a computer program is that it can just neutrally buy and sell stocks depending on however you have it set up, depending on the system, and it has no emotions. It's just buying and selling according to certain conditions. So what if we were to find a way, as our first attempt to make some kind of trading system, what if we were able to program this out? Like a bot that buys when people are afraid, or sells when the sentiment is extremely greedy. Well, out there right now, you may have seen this before, but CNN posts this fear and greed index, which is like an indicator. It's just a number between 0 and 100 that tells you whether the general sentiment is extremely greedy at 100 or extremely fearful at 0. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to try to pull this number out, and if it's on the extreme fear side, then make it issue a buy order for S&P 500 index fund, for instance. Or if you're at the extreme greed end of the spectrum, sell that stock later and see how that type of system would perform over time. So here's the web page itself, and you see the current number right now. So let's try to use that Robinhood API package that we had earlier and have it combined with this data to automatically execute trades according to this quote. So to do that first, my idea here, since they don't really provide any kind of CSV or dataset download for this, so what we're going to do is just scrape this right off the web page. So we're going to locate where this number is in the HTML source code of the page and get that number and store it in a variable, and then we can use that number. You can see here what the fear and greed index is made up of. You can see they have a lot of different indicators. All of these different things combine to determine this number. You can see we're a little bit on the greedy end right now because if you've looked recently, the S&P 500 is over 3,000 all-time highs. People are pretty excited about that. So a lot of these indicators are on greed right now. And you also see, so what I wanted to show is just there's a lot of different indicators that go into this overall number. Safe haven demand, so are people rushing to safer assets? Are they buying riskier stocks? Breadth, are they buying everything or just very select things? Or are they just rotating into specific stocks? And then you see like this put and call options. So there's a lot of fear there, and there's a lot of fear here under this junk bond demand. So even though there's greed going on right now, it seems like there's still a little bit of underlying fear. There's some crash, so maybe people are protecting their positions a lot. So a lot of people are always hesitant to buy at all-time highs because they have these memories of the past when the stock market crashed and lost a lot of money. So some people are just afraid. Every time there's been a big crash, it came from people think of when it was at all-time highs, and they feel like they're going to be the last buyer of that. So why would we even make a trading system based on this indicator? Well, what you'll see, I've looked at the past. We don't have this data set, but what are some examples of when there was extreme fear? 2008, there was extreme fear, and it turns out if you averaged into stocks in 2008, 2009, you're probably up about 400% at least right now, just buying S&P 500, not picking any individual stocks and just doing nothing, leaving it for the last 10 years. You'd be in great shape. And likewise, in cases of extreme greed, such as the dot-com period, in late 99, early 2000, things were just parabolic. Everyone was just making money nonstop. Everyone's just recommending stocks that never even bought stocks before. That was a time to get out. Similar to when Bitcoin peaked in late 2017, it's like all anyone was talking about. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started with coding this thing. So I have took a stab at this before, but I'm gonna start from scratch again. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna screen scrape this page here. So to do that, I'm gonna use a popular Python library, and it's called Beautiful Soup. And this basically will allow you to take some HTML code and then work with it in an easier way. So you can see, like, you can throw some HTML in here, and you can have it, pretty print and format it. You can find where the word bad is, for instance, and it'll return it for you. Or you can, like, say, get me the text between tags in the HTML document. So why is this useful? So the fear and greed index is here, but there's no official API or anything. But I can, like, view the source for this, and, like, I noticed the word now is next to greed here, so I can search this page for now : and you can see, oh, this is exactly where that number 60 is. So what I want to do is kind of find the pattern of this HTML document and figure out how to extract this particular number here. So we're going to do that using Beautiful Soup. So to do that, let's go ahead and install that. So you see at the top here, it has this command pip install Beautiful Soup 4. If you have Python 3 installed, you already have pip, which is used for Python package management. And at your command line here, you can do pip install Beautiful Soup 4. And I already did it a little bit earlier before making this video when sketching this out. So you can see the requirement's already satisfied. But if it's not, it'll install the package there. The other thing you want is there's a library called requests, which I also already have, and you can also use pip to install that as well. And that lets you make HTTP requests. And what we're going to do is, from the command line, fetch this web page, just like with Python code, just like it's a browser. So we're going to get the HTML code. So I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code here, and I have this fear_greed.py. And what I'm going to do is import the request library that we installed, and also copy from the Beautiful Soup documentation. You want to import that library here. So we have that. And then if you look at Beautiful Soup, you can see it just takes a string of HTML to the constructor. So you instantiate Beautiful Soup and you pass it some HTML. What HTML do we want to pass it? Well, we want the HTML for this web page. How do we get that? Well, we use request to make a request to the web page. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab the URL here, copy it to my clipboard, and then I'm going to do request.get, which makes a GET request to that address. And let's go ahead and put that in a constant fear and greed URL. And now it's there. And I'll use that URL and make the requests. And with this library, you can print r.content. And let's just try to run that and see the HTML of the document. So where am I? Python fear greed. I run that and it says, oh, Python 3 install Python 3 fear and greed. Okay. So you can see that dumped a lot of HTML to my terminal. So you can see that looks like it. We got all of this HTML from the CNN page. Okay, so now the next thing to do is to extract that content. We looked at the HTML source code earlier. So we saw the text now. We also see this ID needle chart here, which seems like a pretty good starting point to get to this snippet. So we're going to kind of extract one of the divs out of here and then kind of narrow it down to where that number is. There's a lot of ways to do this with string manipulation. I just went with the first thing that came to mind without overthinking it because I just want the number. We're going to copy, let's see, what are we going to do? We need to find that ID in the page. So there's this find all command. Where did I find that? That's in the documentation here. So there's a find all here that lets you find a specific tag. but I believe there's also a find all for ID. And so if I search through here, I think you can find ID equals here. So I got this here that says soup.findAll ID equals. So what I'll do here is I'll do a new beautiful soup object like they did here, and expect some HTML. Well, we have the HTML here in r.content, so I'll do HTML equals r.content. So that's our HTML string, and then we can find all. And what ID are we looking for in here? We're looking for, I chose the one called needle chart here because it kind of wraps around there, so I want to just narrow this string down to here. So I'll put ID equals needle chart, and I'll just set that equal to div, and we'll print that out and see what it comes back with. So I'm going to clear that out and run this again. And you see I printed this out, and this looks like a list. You see there's brackets around it, so it'll return an array of HTML elements. I got this div ID equals needle chart exactly, and I also have the current fear and greed index, what it is now, and also it's kind of cool because we get the previous close, the index from 1 week ago, and also, yeah, 1 year ago. So we have a little bit of history data here, which is cool. For now, we're just going to use the current fear and greed index. Okay, so we have that string. Since that's a list, we're just going to go ahead and get the first item there because there's only one. So that we're just going to work with a string rather than the whole array. We're just going to get that HTML snippet there. And then what is next? Okay, so we got to drill further down in here. So I'm going to find the location of this fear and greed now string right here within this string so that we can strip that out and just get the number in the next few characters. So we can say fear and greed phrase equals this here. And so what we want to do, I think this is actually some kind of special beautiful soup object, so I'm going to cast this to a string. I figured that out a little bit earlier. So now we just have that string, and then we can find the position of the fear and greed phrase. And let's see if this works. So that'll tell us what character position it's in. You see it says it's at position 117, which is good. And so if we wanted to print the string starting at position 117, we could print the div string. And since it's a string, we can do 117. We can index the string and start at 117, colon, and then leave off any other index, and it'll print the string till the end. So you see it starts at fear and greed now, and then goes to the end. And so what we can do is strip this part off and then get the next 3 characters. So to do that, we'll do the substring. Actually, we'll get the substring of from the position here. So we're going to call this. We'll reset position to div.find fear and greed. The position plus the length of the fear and greed phrase. So that'll actually include the length of the phrase, so that we'll start right here. So we'll start at that position. And then in the div HTML, we'll do from this position, and then position plus 3. And I think that'll extract the exact thing we're looking for. Yeah, see I have the number 60 right here, which is good. So I have the exact fear and greed index. So yeah, I'll just store that in a variable now. Current fear and greed index. equals, and that's a string, so I'll strip it to make sure there's no extra spaces or weird characters, and then also I'm going to cast that to an integer, and let me make sure we're all good still. Strip invalid syntax. Let's see, fix it. Okay, cool. We have an integer and the number 60, which is great. So now we already have the current fear and greed index. So what do we want to do with that? Well, what does extreme fear look like in this index? So I was like, well, what's a point where the index was extremely fearful and extreme greed? And let's prove that would have been a good time to buy or sell stocks. So what I'm thinking about here is I'm going to go to the S&P 500. And let's think about a time when there was a pretty big correction. Let's go to there was just a recently one. There was a 20% correction at the end of December of 2018. Look at that. From S&P 500 at 29.29 down to 24 something. I think it even went down to 23.50 or so that day. So you remember right before Christmas of 2018, pretty big correction. And then at this point, everyone's tripping out saying, oh, 2019, there's going to be a huge bear market. Everyone's scared. And then everyone panic sold right here. Well, look what happened after that. It turned out that was one of the best times to buy. 2,400 to 3,000 right there. You would have made 25% on your money just buying and holding the S&P 500 right then. But that required you not getting fearful when other people are fearful. That's when you wanted to be greedy. So what did the fear and greed index look like that day? I'm going to go here. And to figure that out, since there's no data set, I used archive.org. And that lets you type in a URL and show you what that web page looked like at a particular point in time. So I'm going to paste this URL into the Wayback Machine. And look at that. There's a variety of snapshots of that web page. And what I can do is go to 2018. And I can pick a day. Let's pick Christmas Eve and see what that web page looked like. And I bet you people were pretty fearful that day. And it turned out to be a good time to buy. So here's the snapshot of the page loading. Notice extreme fear 8. Everyone's tripping out. And if you're emotional, you're probably trapped in this as well. And you might have lightened your portfolio as well at the worst possible time. All these indicators were on extreme fear. Everyone's afraid. That was the time to buy. Extreme fear is an 8 here. So what we can do is compare that number 60, the current index, to what's extremely fearful. And then also, if it's really far on this end, we'll call that greed. So I'm going to use just the numbers 80 and 20. I don't think this is very extreme. So you can make it go under 10 as your threshold. I'm going to say 20. And then I'll make the other threshold 80. So what I'm going to do is make two constants here. One called the fear threshold. I'm going to call that 20. And one called the greed threshold. And call that 80. And so I'm going to say, I'm going to define two variables here to say others are greedy and others are fearful. So others are greedy equals current fear and greed index greater to or equal than greed threshold. And then others are fearful equals current fear and greed index less than or equal to fear threshold. Okay. So that's cool. So yeah, now we already have two conditions here, and the only thing left is to hook those up. So if others are greedy, we're gonna buy. No, sell. Sell. And then if others are fearful, buy. And then, yeah, if it's not extreme, we're just going to probably hold in the meantime. So we bought when they're fearful, and we're just going to hold on and then sell when others are greedy. So this is where we just plug in our Robinhood code. So what we could do is take this, see what these are. So we'll get our code from the last lesson real quick just to initialize this. So I'll just import the config and import the Robinhood library. And yeah, you can modularize all of this stuff and add a bunch of error handling. We made a lot of assumptions here, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's just a video. So we're going to instantiate Robinhood, log in. I'm just going to copy this whole deal. And there we go. So we can instantiate Robinhood. So I'll comment that Robinhood setup, log in. And we'll get SPY. Let's say we're just going to buy SPY, not Twitter. We're not going to buy Twitter when others are fearful. So the stock is SPY. I'll go ahead and print that out for now too, and just get the quote on the SPY now, just make sure we're getting the right thing. So there we go. I'll put that in a constant symbol to, how about instrument to buy equals SPY. So I'll do instruments to buy, and instruments to buy, instrument to buy. Okay, cool. And I'll run that too. Let's see if we can log in and get our quote for the S&P 500. Oh, I got that SMS code. 1 second, I'm gonna get my phone. All right, I have my phone, and I'll figure out in the next video how to turn that SMS off or handle that for us so that we don't have to deal with that again. So others are greedy, buy and sell. I have a code coming. I'm going to get my text real quick. My phone was charging. Okay, and then while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get this code here from our library. So let's see, what do we have? Place buy order and place sell order. I'll paste these in here. I'll move them in a second. And then let me get this code 646. Okay. I have a code. Okay, so you can see I have the S&P 500, the Spider ETF. I have a quote there, and then you see the current price is 301.99. So that's my instrument, which is good. And yeah, we're going to place a buy order for that instrument. I stored that in stock, actually. I'll call it instrument here, since that seems to be the preferred term, because you might not be buying common stock, you might be buying an option or something like that. So I'll buy an instrument and just one share maybe. I'm not going to do a real trade right now because it's late at night, and so I can't buy anything anyway, and it's Sunday. So I'll do a quote, and we're going to do Robinhood place order, and we'll put that equal when people are fearful, and we'll do a sell order here if others are greedy. So we have, our script seems pretty simple. We'll do more testing in a future video. I'm going to get some money into an account so that we can try some of this stuff out for real. But I think you see the basic gist of it. We scraped the CNN page to determine the current sentiment of the market based on just pure numerical information. We got that number. We also determined some parameters under which we would buy or sell based on fear and greed. And then we incorporated the code we wrote earlier to log into Robinhood. And we have a condition for when people are greedy and fearful. We should be able to place these buy and sell orders. So I'm going to follow this up in a future video. Yeah, and then you can later on, we'll see if we can add other conditions or come up with more complex strategies and do something for real with this. Thanks.